Welcome, IT changemakers, to the DEX Show with Tim Flower and Tom McGraw. Let's get into it.
You know what it is, changemakers. It's the DEX show within a show within a show, where Tim, we get to talk to fascinating next thinkers, and I do think, how many organizations could this even work with, Tim?
And I love that it works. We got, I love talking with people outside and get thought leaders outside, but we got some really smart people inside, and it's great to be able to share it with everybody.
It's absolutely so. And, before we introduce today's guests, today's next thinkers, because they are plural, we should just mention that that's why you don't hear the usual Reality Bytes panel. We thought we've got two guests. We don't want to have too many people on the microphones. It'd be a bit disorientating for us all. But today's guests, we invited them on because they actually co-wrote a Nexthink blog together called Teaching AI to Speak Nexthink Query Language, Lessons from Nexthink Assist. And we thought it was such a fantastic story. We would have them on the show to explore the conversation, to explore the topic rather, in a more conversational format. So let's, without further ado, first of all, welcome back to the show, returning guest, Mohamed Kafsi, Director of AI Diagnostics here at Nexthink. Hi, Mohamed. And let's also welcome first-time DEX show guest, Maxime Kinet, software engineer and tech lead in diagnostics here at Nexthink. Hi, Maxime. Welcome to the show for the first time. And you both, of course, work on the AI side of the business, and that's very good timing because there's a bit of AI assist related news we should touch upon soon enough in our conversation. But before we get into the technical aspects of assist in general and the story we're here to discuss, just want to begin by asking you both a question about your relationship with this technology, if you will. Was there a particular encounter with AI that made you think, wow, this is going to change everything? And it could be something from your personal life, your study life, your professional life, any of the above. Maxime, since you're a first-time guest, maybe you should start.
For me, actually, I think it was here in the office. I was working with some colleagues and we were pair programming, actually, because I wanted someone to explain me how to do something. And I was sharing my screen. And at that time, I had just been onboarded on a Copilot technical preview program. And I just enabled it. And while I was starting to program what my colleague was explaining, at some point Copilot came and generated a huge chunk of code. And we all looked at it, and there was a blank in the conversation, and someone said, well, that's a hell of a completion. And it was exactly what we needed. And I think this is when I realized, okay, this is going to impact us tremendously. For me, this was my moment.
I like it. What about you, Mohamed?
Yeah, that's a great example, but mine is much, let's say, much older example. So it traces back, let's say, 20 or 22 years ago when I started like my computer science degree here at EPFL, which is the engineering school in Lausanne. And it was like typically my first encounter with, let's say, AI, discovering AI. And I remember we had like a software engineering project where we basically have teams and we had to build a checker game. Do you know checkers?
Sure. Yeah.
And we had to build the checker games, and every team has basically to code a checker game from scratch. And the idea was to have a competition. It means at the end, every team is presenting the checker game and they compete against each other, and the first one get a prize.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were coding this, and you're basically coding the intelligence behind the checker game or your AI,
mm-hmm.
and you see it improving until the moment it's better than us, right? And when you see it competing, it's like your kid competing in a tournament. I think it was a very a wow moment because you create it from scratch and you see it, and it's basically winning or losing. It's something that's emotionally very strong, right? And
That's cool.
technology evolved in the meantime, right? Because those were very simple AI algorithms back at that time, very simple game with limited space. But this wow moment, I retrieve it as I grow my career, with recently with Gen AI and LLMs and stuff like this. But this moment is really a moment I like and I cherish.
That's a beautiful example. I love it. I love it. And look, welcome again back to the show, Mohamed. It's nice to have you back. And
Thanks.
actually, before we get into the sort of very technical story we're going to be telling together today, I started to hear more this year about this term observability as a key term in relation to DEX and by extension Nexthink, right? What's your understanding of what that term denotes? And what key features do you think a real observability platform in 2025 needs to feature to be able to, to have the right to being called an observability platform?
No, it's a good point, Tom. It's also a term I hear more and more, also discussing with customers, and it's a term I hear, of course, discussing with the customer of Nexthink, but also Nexthink internally, like engineers and even product managers. And to answer your question, I think there are, let's say, 3 important points when it comes to observability or building an observability platform, right? The first one is simply like having the data, right? Comprehensive data collection that allows you to have the observability of what's happening end to end, right? And if we think at Nexthink and Nexthink Infinity platform, we have it like starting from the device level with the device view, but we also have it. We offer it cross-customer, right, with cloud intelligence, where we basically provide observability cross customers with anonymized data. And I think this is a very important point. Let's say it's a foundation of what we need. And then, of course, when you have this data and you have this data at scale, it's hard to make sense out of this data, right? Because I cannot throw all the data at you and you try to make sense out of it. So we really need to be able to provide, let's say, insights instead of providing data at scale for our customers. And I think this is coming back to AI with machine learning, like simply, but also generative AI, there is an opportunity like for the end user to be able to make sense out of the data at scale, right? By just infusing the right insights for the user. So this is the second point, really building insights and not just the data. And finally, I think it's a very important point that closes the loop is actionability, right? Because once you have the data, you have the insights, you have an understanding of what's happening. You need the actionability in order to basically remediate or to improve a given situation, right? And this at Nexthink, we have it, of course, with remote actions, with flows. So I think having the 3 elements, the right data at scale, insights, and also the actionability allow us to be able to bring value to our customers, and for any observability platform to bring value to its users.
And Mohamed just outlined see, diagnose, fix in perfect technical terms, yes. Right? We see it,
True.
We can diagnose it with the insights, and we got the actionability to fix it. So Maxime, welcome to the show from me as well for the first time. Before we get into the bit of the development story that we're going to cover, talk a bit about NQL, how it's unique from other query languages and the role that it played here in Nexthink's success.
Well, NQL is a very, very important piece in the Nexthink platform. We collect a lot of data for this observability that Mohamed just explained, and we put that in a big data platform. NQL is the unique way for you to talk with that platform and to retrieve the information you need. So you need to know how to write an NQL query to get exactly the information you need, but you need also to understand the subtleties of how the data is collected, what data is collected, when the data is invalidated, because we don't keep all the data forever, so you cannot go back in the past as much as you want, for instance. So if you want to be an expert at Nexthink and an expert in DEX analysis, you need to know NQL. You need to be an expert at NQL. It's fundamental. It's not only the language, because it's a language that is custom. It's not similar to SQL. It's something different. But it's also the data model. You need to understand what NQL is used for. So when you request data from a certain table, you need to understand what that table contains, what each column contains. Sometimes we collect metrics, and understanding what each metrics contain is very, very important. NQL is used everywhere. So you can type in directly in QL to retrieve the data, but you can also have a lot of service retrieve data within the Nexthink solution. You retrieve data by writing in QL, in code. So you have service to service communication, you have front end to back end communication, like the front end, they have a lot of NQL to define what needs to be displayed, for instance. So it's really at the heart of our solution. And if you want to be an expert in your solution, you need to master it. It also has a lot of nice hidden feature because it abstracts away all the complexity. In NQL, we can define who can access what, for instance. We have some privileged user that can see the names of the employee and these things. But we have other users of NQL that can see a certain user, but his name will be hidden, for instance. And all this is abstracted away in permission applied on NQL. So two persons typing the same NQL might get slightly different results depending on their permission. And this is a nice feature that NQL brings to abstract away all that complexity.
It's fascinating. Through my IT career, I did a little bit of my own SQL querying, access databases, and SQL Server in the back end of SMS to get client data, but it was all self-taught. It was all very much trial and error, and can be fairly frustrating as well, especially when you're really not confident that you've got the query formed correctly, so you're not confident in the data that you're getting back. Why is it that IT teams often struggle with query languages, and how is AI beginning to remove some of those roadblocks? So Mohamed, maybe you can jump in here on that one.
Yeah, definitely, Tim. First, I want to tell you I'm impressed. I didn't know you were writing SQL queries in the past. So
Yeah.
respect. I don't know about you, Tim.
Don't tell him that, Mohamed. We'll never hear the end of it. Don't say that to him. No.
So for me, SQL was a nightmare for me personally. It's like, I think the first time I had to write SQL during my studies, and we had this class about databases, and SQL is powerful, and that's why it's the most popular query language out there, of course. But it's very complex, right? I remember there's join and outer join, and you have to respect certain things. So it's very, it's very powerful, but yet very complex and hard to master, right? And when I came to Nexthink, when I joined Nexthink 3 years ago, and I discovered the NQL, so now it looks much simpler than SQL. It's great, right? It means I can do. It looks very simple, and then I can do queries. But I'm still, I'm still an engineer by training, like Maxime, and we like to geek out and to discover a new language, even if it's simpler than SQL. But I think we are not very representative of the overall population, because you need to be in this technical part and know SQL. So NQL remains like a barrier to entry for certain people to Nexthink, right? You need to learn the language, even if it's simple. You still need to learn it. You still need to master to understand the data model, right? And we hear Pedro, so our CEO, also mentioning that we want to democratize DEX. We want to open like Nexthink to more and more users. And I think if we need to do that, we need to remove any barrier to entry, right, to Nexthink. And that's why when we, at the inception of Assist, right, when we started really as like as a way to learn NQL. We want to say, what about, there is an opportunity today with generative AI, those models where you can explain in a simple sentence what you want, and then get it, let's say, translated in another language. It can be NQL, but it can be anything else. So there is an opportunity for us to simplify the user experience, right? And I think the best, let's say, best query language is English. So if our users are able to write their question in English and get the right data they need, I think we have done a great job in really democratizing DEX and access to our to Nexthink, right?
So expand on that a little bit. I can't imagine. So I don't have that grasp of the knowledge required to train a language model. But languages in general, whether it's a spoken language or a query language, they're very specific to syntax and structure. The query language is also, you've got to get the commands correct, and like you said, all of the structural elements of joins. Did that help or hinder the teams when training Assist to generate NQL from just a simple natural language question?
Yeah, indeed. When we started, I mean, we wanted to use commercial LLMs to do that, and that was one of the quick finding, is that they don't know NQL, so they make a lot of syntax mistakes because they think they can translate what they know from SQL to NQL easily, and they start to assume that the language will work similarly. But that's not the case. You know, these LLM, they are trained by just ingesting all the information they can get from the internet. And this is one of the reasons they are good at very known code language like Python, Java, C++. Or
SQL.
Yeah, or SQL. Because there's a lot of it on that. It's discussed on Stack Overflow extensively. It's shared on GitHub publicly. So you have a lot of sources of information for all this language. If you compare that to NQL, it's very, very tiny. It's only present in the documentation of the Nexthink platform. And even though it has some similarities with other language, originally it was based on a language by Microsoft named Cusco. It evolved, and it's no longer like Cusco. You cannot use Cusco and say, I know Cusco, so I know NQL. That doesn't work. We have additional statement, we have additional constraint, and then you have the data model. So the foundational knowledge of the vanilla LLM doesn't contain NQL. It was not optimized for that because they optimized to work for most of the use case, and NQL is a very, very limited use case, in fact. So if you say to an LLM, to ChatGPT, for instance, to generate NQL, it might seem to work after a few attempts. You might have it, okay, it seemed to work. But when you dig a bit deeper, it will hallucinate very, very often. So it will invent column, it will invent statement, it will invent structures that are not correct. So when we started, this was the big challenge. And another one is, okay, if you wanna fill that gap of knowledge, then you need to provide it with data. But we didn't have data when we started. We were like, okay, where can we get data to show enough NQL queries so that it starts to grasp how the language is structured? What are the constraints? So these were the two main challenges when we started.
Yeah, it's like, if you think of it, it's like humans, right? It's those pre-trained LLMs, they have seen so much on the web, they have the average knowledge, but they don't know NQL, and it's like we need to somehow train them, right? We need training them is not showing them one or two examples. It's like really training them. Like our users are getting training in NQL, so we need to train the LLM and Assist in order to produce good quality and relatively complex NQL queries.
This is what we call going from checkers to chess, Mohamed.
Yes, exactly. That's
so
a
talk
good,
about that. I'm interested
good
in
analogy.
both of you. Maybe touch on that journey, right? Because from, and a new term for me, retrieval augmented generation, to fine-tuning, we're really taking an iterative approach to this versus a big bang, right? Talk us through the journey of how we're starting with something really good and then evolving it to something great.
Yeah, I think when we started Assist, as you said, it's really a journey. We started like with like a simple model, and then we went incrementally in order to improve as we go. And how did we do it? First thing is usually this is what we do when you develop an AI model in general, either Assist on any other AI model, is really to say, okay, to start with a benchmark, right? Because the benchmark basically will be like the North Star and will allow us to see whether we're going in the right direction or not, right? So we really started with a benchmark that is basically, in simple terms, user questions and write, let's say, NQL queries associated with these user questions. And once we call it actually the golden data set, that is basically our North Star, allowing us to see how good we are performing. And once we had this in place, then we can start, like we started very pragmatically with first what we call zero-shot learning. It means asking, as Maxime said, an LLM to generate an NQL query, but just explaining what is NQL and providing some information about data model. Very quickly we saw that we needed, by injecting relevant examples in the context, what we call the context of the LLM, think of it as the memory or the RAM of the LLM. By providing the right examples that are associated with the question the user is asking, the performance improved, and this is what we call retrieval augmented generation, or RAG. Retrieval in the sense if you ask a question, Tom, the algorithm will retrieve questions that are similar, right? And inject the answers in the memory of the LLM, right? So it's a quite elegant way in order to provide, in addition to the memory, what the LLM learned in the past, giving something fresh that is relevant to the user question.
It's kind of a quick patch, right?
Yes.
Something, okay, yeah, I know you don't know that, but I will quickly squeeze it before you answer, so you can read the right answer and hopefully you can do a better job.
Exactly. And after we saw with RAG that we improved the performance, and perhaps Maxime is like the expert, can elaborate on the stages afterwards where we really, took it to the next level with fine-tuning, right?
Yeah, I guess at some point we realized that we started to have a lot of data in that database of RAG, that at some point we could maybe directly inject not only the 2 or 3 closest examples and show them to the LLM, but inject all of those, and it's hundreds of thousands, directly in the memory. And for that, we need to process to what we call fine-tuning, which is basically taking a model that exists, and in our case, we took Code Llama, which is a model specialized for code, and we start to show it examples. Like we show it a batch of examples where this is the question, what do you produce? And at first, he will produce queries that are probably like SQL and so on, but by training the model is just updating the prediction so that the next time it does it a little bit better. And so we do it by batch, and anytime we update the weights, so the weights is the memory of the network, then it gets better and better at producing. At some point we see less and less syntax error, and at some point it starts also to learn, okay, how to relate what the user asks to what needs to be in the output. And this fine-tuning process is something that is a bit resource intensive. You need GPUs to do that. As I said, you need a lot of data. But once that is done, then you have your own model, and you can prompt it with very much simply, right? You just give it the question, and then it knows NQL, and it's much better because you can give it the whole varieties in all the tables. It has much more examples that it can use from its memory to predict what would be the best query to answer. So this is what we call fine-tuning. We've done it to have a specialized model for NQL that is interacting with the other more common LLMs that take in charge the chat part of Assist, for instance.
It's
And,
really
if
fascinating to hear the journey of learning NQL and then fine-tuning it based on some of the answers it gets from the queries that are generated, and then being able to take action on the things that it learned. It's really, that's kind of what I want to put to bed, Mohamed, here is, if I were to walk away now, the perception I have is this is really just a query generator. And it's so much more than that. It's really evolving into a true DEX analyst, a collaborative partner. So beyond just simplifying NQL, how does Assist really enhance IT operations from troubleshooting specific issues all the way through strategic decision making? Let's make sure folks aren't left with the thought that this is just generating queries.
It's a very good point, and our vision for Assist is really to be a DEX analyst for any user that is using our platform and Nexthink Infinity. And this DEX analyst is getting better and better, getting more seniority, more experience, and also having access to more tools, right? Because think of it, in the beginning, we started Assist mainly with a tool that is generating, as you say, like NQL queries, but this is not the vision, it's just a start, right? The idea is to provide it more tools, more powers in order to be able to help the user, right? And our vision is really to have a true DEX analyst that is helping you in the product, getting the right insights you need. And the tools are like generating NQL queries, as I said, but now it's basically generating engaged campaigns based on a simple description, getting answer from the documentation, and now it's really about also making analysis, right? So basically compiling different sources, compiling investigation, plus some search on the product documentation, and basically providing you with an actual analysis that is related to the question, right? And Maxime very recently did a demo with Sam, very impressing, about like DEX 2.0 that we released recently. And you can see now we can also ask open-ended questions that are not very well defined, and Assist is basically will go and look in different tools in the pages of Nexthink and certain dashboard and documentation and investigation, and provide you with insights that are related to this question. So it's very impressive. This is a vision we're having for Assist, for our users.
And that's something, even just with NQL, when you build a text to NQL system, you have one question, one query. But often we realize people, they ask questions that would require multiple queries to answer properly.
Yeah.
And Assist 2.0 is capable of doing that. It's capable of saying, okay, for that question, I would need to run several investigations to give a proper answer. Not even mentioning the other tools that we are putting in, like the documentation or the other things, but just saying, okay, I need at least 2 or 3 queries to give a complete response to that user. This is something that we are going towards.
Yeah, and to add one last point, it's also aligned with the vision we have at Nexthink, in the sense building agents that are very specialized and one, that are experts and specialized in one domain, and that are able to help the user. Assist is basically the DEX analyst, the expert in Nexthink, allowing the user to get the insights they need. Autopilot is basically the expert in IT and IT resolution, allowing our users to fix IT issues. It's really the vision we have with a very strong specialized agent that we train, and that basically are ramping up in speed and improving, right? Starting as an intern, and then a junior, and then an expert, and then that's the vision we have.
It's fascinating. Before I give it back to Tom, just a comment. Just before recording this podcast, I did a live session with probably 15 new hires, brand new Nexthinkers. And my session was all about the evolution of end user compute from the level 1 help desk technician to the level 2 desktop support analyst, level 3 desktop engineering, and level 4 or the enterprise architect, the different skills and knowledge and expertise that they gather over time, the different tools they have access to, the different privileges they have. And it's fascinating to see the work that you're doing parallel that journey in a digital way to what a human would do over the course of its career, far faster and with some really great results. It's just really interesting timing for me personally, having just done that session, and then hear you talk about that same progression here is really cool parallel.
An amazing story, guys. Any surprising or creative ways that it's already been leveraged out there by customers and users to solve operational challenges that you could share?
I think we had some surprise at the beginning. Maybe not that they were particularly creative, but we were surprised in the way they were using it, because, and this is a lesson learned, they typically don't explain well what they need. They explain a broad problem that they have. And the first version of Assist would take one query to answer that. They would, while we were expecting them to explain clearly what they need, they would say, "Oh, this PC is slow. Why?" And from a pure end-user perspective, like a slow PC is many things. Is it slow to boot? Is it slow to load a page on the internet? Is it slow to make a web request? All these things. So we had to learn a bit and step back and say, okay, our user will keep asking these questions, so how can we address them better? Another surprising thing that we saw is that they started to use Assist to ask quite basic questions, not necessarily because they don't know the answer, but because it's quite fast to get it through Assist. So they went there and they passed a list of devices, for instance, and they say, okay, give me the last boot time of all these devices, so they can quickly extract information. And I don't know exactly what was the process, but they have this way of working that we try to adjust to and serve them better all these use cases.
And with that kind of evolution into a true AI agent, quite a difficult thing to say that. What future capabilities are you most excited about, and what future milestones should listeners be aware about what's coming next with Assist?
I think for what's coming next with Assist, I'll let Maxime answer afterwards. But there are two things I'm excited about personally, and that are opportunities in our for Nexthink. First thing is what we call reasoning models. Now, I don't know if you're using ChatGPT O1. We also recently heard about DeepSeek R1. Those are the models that we call reasoning models. Basically, they take more time to basically they verbalize their thoughts, right? And they take more time before answering. And this we've seen in the different benchmark in the research community that is improving the quality of the output, right? It's like a human, if I ask you a question and I give you 1 second to answer, the answer will not be as great as giving you 1 minute, right? You go for 1 minute and you do some research and you come back to me, Tom, right? I know you're very fast.
Sadly, it's the same, Mohamed, but okay.
Yeah.
And I think when you read the thinking process of R1, it's really impressive, because you seem to read the mind of someone that thinks very fast, makes assumption, corrects itself, and come back to the previous assumptions and no, wait, I should do this because he asked that, but given this, maybe I should do this, wait, let's step back. It's really amazing to read.
And what's fascinating for me and just is like the way they train it, right? It's like reinforcement learning. So when they trained this LLM, they didn't ask it to think. It's basically learned through like reinforcement learning by seeing examples and failing. That basically thinking longer will allow us to have more accurate answers, right? That's what's fascinating. And for us, I think there is an opportunity for everything we're doing, right? For like a Nexthink Assist, but also autopilot to fix IT issues. I think we can capitalize on those reasoning models that are taking more time to produce the output in order to have a higher quality outcome and value for our customers. If we discuss with DEX analyst, for example, we can imagine asking a very complex question to Assist, very advanced, and then Assist can go in a reasoning mode, tell you, wait, give me 2 minutes and I'll get you a report about what you're asking, and then going there, reasoning, fetching different sources, and giving you something very strong, right, around this very strategic question that would require, 2 or 3 days for a human, right? So this aspect is very interesting for me. It's very fascinating, right, in the intellectual side. And the second thing I'm curious about and I would like to also push is like really this multi-agent collaboration, right? There is a lot of research about multi-agent collaboration where basically you have different agents that are specialized and that cooperate in order to achieve a common goal, right? Mm-hmm. So now we would love, Maxime and myself, to explore if we take Assist as the expert in Nexthink and also Autopilot as the expert in IT and IT issue resolution. If we make them work together, I think we can achieve something very, very strong and beautiful for our customers. So this is like something I would love to explore further.
Definitely, I agree.
I think, Maxime, you were going to end with those things the listeners should be aware of as what's coming next for Assist concretely?
Well, I think we have short-term goals and we have long-term goals. Short-term is like we are adding more and more of the sources that Mohamed mentioned, but we are also making the output of Assist more actionable. And concretely, one thing we would like to do is to be able to generate plots. And it's something that we will soon enable for some beta customers. They can basically explain what they want, and instead of having a description of the number, the Assist would directly make a visualization of it. And the result is fascinating because you ask a broad question and you get a mini report with 2-3 plots and an explanation of the interpretation of each. This is very powerful, I think, and this will be enabled pretty soon. Another thing we are working on is to be able to add more knowledge base. Typically, when people ask, okay, what is the reason for that problem? What is the root cause of that problem I observe in the data? Assist does not necessarily know that well, but we could populate some knowledge base of, okay, this problem typically is a driver problem, or this version of this software is known to produce this kind of bugs. Some very punctual knowledge that we could inject in the memory, in the short-term memory of Assist. But also customer knowledge base, like they could say, I find this resource useful and I want Assist to be aware. So someone in a company could put it into Assist, and all his colleagues could benefit from it. Whenever he asks, okay, I have this problem with a device, Assist could say, oh, your colleague also had this problem and made this recommendation of what is the resolution plan you should
Wow.
And then more long-term, what Mohamed described, like the true analyst mode, where you could throw a problem at Assist and then it would go away for a few minutes, but come back with a consolidated report that contains the result of multiple investigation, because it had crunched the data in certain direction, analyzing the issue you describe, and so on.
Amazing. I actually love the line, Mohamed, from teaching AI checkers to teaching it all of these crazy, much more complex languages, and continuing to hear that kind of joy as you watch AI step up to every learning task that you give it, and continue to kind of amaze you through your career. Real pleasure to have you both on and hear all about that. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you for having us.
It was a pleasure.
If nothing else, I learned today who to call when I'm struggling with my next SQL query.
Call Maxime, please.
Quite so. And we'll have links in the show notes to that blog that you co-authored as well for a little bit more info, and of course to some more information about Assist for interested listeners, which I hope there are a few of out there. Okay, thank you so much, gentlemen. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good stuff.